Okay, I think we're ready to get started. Thank you guys for coming out today to academia. I'm Jessica Geyer. I'm your chief history nerd. I'm honored to be the curator here at Tuscarora Academy. A couple of logistics before we get started. We do want to say thanks to Dan Love at Love Shine Agency for providing the shade tent today. And if you need it, we do have a portable toilet. It is around the back side of the building. That's courtesy of Shelley and Travis Zeiters at Parsons. A big thank you to Susan Bassler and John for providing the audio equipment today. And they also have drinks and snacks. And so definitely make sure you stop by their table today. So earlier this year, we had many big improvements to the museum. Thanks to a very successful fundraising drive with matching funds from a very generous donor, we now have a climate control system at our museum. This enables us to be available for pre-scheduled tours year-round, and it better preserves our building and our collection. Our volunteers have been working very hard to get the museum ready for today. For example, Austin Willi and Spencer Myers spent countless hours chipping, sanding, repainting, doing all that stuff to the interior windows. We have applied for a Keystone grant to finish the work on the exterior of the windows and to install protective UV filters. I've also redesigned many of the large exhibit signs and had them produced by Impressions Printing, and they did an excellent job. We rely on our volunteers and contributing donations from members and guests to keep the Historical Society running. Thank all of you for your continued support over the years. Today marks the opening of our new permanent exhibit, the Doty Room. The Doty family descended from Mayflower passenger Edward Doty. He participated in the first encounter, the first Thanksgiving, and the first duel fought in New England. And then when his descendants settled in Juniata County in 1790, those Doty firsts continued with our county's first doctor lineage, first Masonic lodge, and first bank. This new exhibit will give you a glimpse into the Doty home, their life, and their many connections within the county, whose contributions we still benefit from today. When you go into our museum, which by the way, the entrance is on the side of the building, that exhibit is the last door on the right on the second floor. Today is also the opening of 2023's special exhibit room. Typically, we do have an annual theme for the room, but this year we wanted to get more items out for viewing from storage, plus show you some of the new donations we've gotten. Some of the new things we've gotten, for example, is the uniform of one of 17 young Juniata County men who were drafted to Vietnam, documents from the White House and Mamie Eisenhower to a McAllisterville business, and a little story about why making moonshine at the Black Log Post Office didn't go so well. The room also has some items we've gotten out of archival storage that have never been displayed before. These items include a wedding dress made from a World War II parachute, driving gloves and goggles from the early automobile days, and a cradle quilt that rocked the babies of Civil War General Robert McAllister, as well as the general's engraved walking cane, and so much more. There is an old adage that blesses those who plant trees in whose shade they shall never sit. When the Academy planted the trees around this campus at an Arbor Day celebration in the 1880s, they could not have dreamt that we'd be here today celebrating our 53rd year as a museum. And I'm certain that when this building was constructed 207 years ago, they would have never imagined that families from more than 30 states would clamor to gain admittance for their children, or that it would produce alumni that went on to become highly influential in every state in America. I'm also willing to bet that when a guy from Delaware walked into our museum in 1979 and walked out pocketing 3 of our items from our collection, he wouldn't have guessed that his act would lead to the creation of this 900-page detailed catalog collection of everything in our collection. While the theft was unfortunate and violating, lessons learned led to this better inventory system and improved security. So what I'm trying to say is, I know what and where everything is in that museum, so between me and our new Brink security system, you shouldn't even think about it. So, in front of you today are those 3 relics from Juniata County's past, back after 44 years of living among million-dollar guns. This is a Revolutionary War sharp flintlock pistol from the Culbertson family, Marshall Donnelly's Civil War Fife, and Alfred Bartram's World War II Colt 45. These pieces of history were returned to us thanks to the efforts of a top-notch law enforcement team, and we are honored to have 3 members of that team here with us today. Please join me in a profound appreciation for Detective Brandon Doherty, Detective Andrew Rathbone, and Assistant United States Attorney K.T. Newton. In a moment, you will hear more from them, but first I also want to recognize a few other honored guests that we have with us today to help welcome our guests to our county. Our County Commissioner Mark Partner is here. District Attorney Corey Snook is here. Representative Perry Stambaugh and Senator Judy Ward, as well as former Representative Fred Noy, who was our state representative when the theft occurred and has always been a big supporter of our museum. So thank you, Fred, for all of your help over the years, and thank all of you for coming here today. When I received a phone call in 2020 from Detective Doherty saying that they may have recovered some of our items in an antiquities raid, he said it was only by the grace of a police report that they found from more than 40 years earlier that led them to us. That police report was filed by our very own retired state trooper, Jerry Eaton. Next, we are so pleased for you to hear from Assistant United States Attorney K.T. Newton.
It's a pleasure to be here with all of you today. More than a decade ago, Upper Marion Township detectives Doherty and Rathbone received a complaint from a man who told them he had seen for sale at a local gun show a firearm that had been stolen from the Valley Forge Historical Society back in the early 70s. The detectives investigated the complaint and found that the firearm offered for sale was not stolen from Valley Forge, but this started them on an investigative journey, the fruits of which we see here today. These 2 detectives, little dreaming where this would lead, began to look into this cold case theft and found there had actually been multiple unsolved thefts from the Valley Forge Museum between 1968 and 1979, mostly antique firearms, and including antique pistols, muskets, long rifles dating back to the American Revolution. In the course of their investigation, the detectives reviewed records long held in storage. Some they got from a mouse-infected attic. and we learned about these and other thefts that had occurred. They received assistance from a lot of individuals, including the president of the Museum of the American Revolution, Scott Stevenson, who at the time was in the planning stages for the museum. They learned of an anonymous phone call to the Valley Forge Historical Society, where someone said they knew someone who knew an attorney who had information on pistols stolen from the museum back in the 70s. They had got an anonymous letter sent to somebody in Vermont that had photographs of weapons and had information about weapons, which they investigated and learned that some of those in the photographs had been stolen from the Valley Forge Historical Society. They also reviewed family estate dispute documents, all of which led them to an individual named Michael Corbett. After the detectives were unable to contact Mr. Corbett directly, the detectives and the Montgomery County District Attorney's Office contacted the FBI, our crime team, FBI Philadelphia, and the United States Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, which is where I work, to join in their investigation. And this joint effort, which included FBI agents Jay Garcher and Sarah Cardone, Assistant District Attorneys for Montgomery County, Stu Ryan and Kathleen McLaughlin, and Montgomery County District Attorney Kevin Steele. This resulted in us executing a search warrant at the residence in which Michael Corbett lived in Delaware, and we recovered a number of antique firearms. None of those firearms that we recovered, though, were any of the ones that were stolen from Valley Forge, and only 2 of them were ones that we recognized at that time as actually having been stolen. So we began a new phase of this investigation, one that took a significant amount of time and effort for the team. Which of the antique firearms that we got could we prove were stolen, and where did they come from? based on what we knew about Michael Corbett, we believed that most of them probably were stolen. But the fact is, what were they? Where did they come from? And how do we prove that they were stolen? And given the time period of the thefts, likely in the 70s, where they were likely stolen from, county historical societies such as yours right here, there was no one place to look. And so the team interviewed sources, reviewed documents recovered during the search, sent letters to numerous museums asking about thefts from many of those museums up and down the East Coast. We sought assistance from museum curators, from experts, and we were fortunate enough to obtain the files of East Labrador detective Ron Savage, who unfortunately passed away earlier this year. And in Detective Savage's files, where he had been investigating another museum thief who also stole firearms back in the 60s and back in the 70s and 80s, from those files, that's where we actually were able to find a police report that had been prepared, thank goodness, for the theft that occurred here. And we were able to match up the description in the police report to the 3 items that you see here in front of you. And this is where I make a plea to museums, but I don't have to make it to Jessica. Because my plea is document what you have, take photographs, and write descriptions. And I cannot tell you how much it warms my heart to see what Jessica has done. Well, we hope that there is never any other thefts from Tuscarora, from Juniata County at this point. If there are, I cannot tell you how much better chance we have of recovering the items and getting them back to you if we can prove that they were actually stolen from here. In December of 2021, so a long time after we started, Michael Corbett was charged with the possession of a number of stolen items from different museums and historical societies in Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, and Mississippi. Items ranging from the American Revolution, the Spanish-American War, and World War II. He ultimately did enter a guilty plea, and part of his plea was he had access to firearms that he had stolen from a number of museums up and down the East Coast. And we were not able to find them. We don't know where he had them. His attorney simply said he has a way to a path forward to maybe recover some of these other items. But as part of the plea agreement, Mr. Corbett had to turn those items over, waive any ownership right, which he did not have, to them. So we were able to get them back to the museums. Also during the investigation, we were able to uncover additional stolen items that were stolen from museums that were in possession of Michael Corbett's brother. And that actually includes the Civil War fife and the sharp pistol from the Revolutionary War that you see in front of you today. So between the 2 of these individuals, we were able to get back a number of items. But what I think perhaps has been most striking for us in our investigation is that where these pieces of history were stolen from. 6 historical societies, 4 historic sites, 2 military history museums, and 3 state history museums, again ranging from eastern, central, and western Pennsylvania, New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Mississippi. Each of these institutions, including the Tuscarora Academy Museum, preserves the legacy of our country, and it honors and highlights our shared history. Each of the objects returned to you, as you can see, belong to individuals who lived here and who fought for here at some point in our history. They connect us with the past, with real people, places, events, and ideals in ways that are as important and significant to us now as they were when they were held and used by their owners many years ago. Yet they have been taken simply to be possessed, not to be sold, not to be displayed, just to be had. So I speak today for the entire investigative and prosecution team, and for Jacqueline Romero, the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, in saying we are truly honored to be able to return these objects with their stories and their legacies to you, and to see them here where they belong today in your community to be appreciated by all of you. So thank you very much.
Does anybody else want to say a few words before we open it up for questions? Okay, does anybody have questions?
Yeah, is he doing any time?
What I can tell you is because of the plea agreement that we worked out, because it was more important to us to be able to get a lot of items back to their owners, to the victims, including, as I told Jessica, one was a Colt Whitneyville Walker revolver. It was stolen from the Connecticut State Library. It was valued at more than $1 million. We had 2 firearms belonging to General Omar Bradley. that were taken from the U.S. Army War College Museum, a battlefield pickup from the Battle of Bizerte in Tunisia, and one of his presentation pistols. Those are the kinds of objects we got back. Because of that, the plea agreement we worked out and that the judge agreed to was that he actually received 1 day imprisonment in jail, 3 years imprisonment at home, a significant, I think it was a $60,000 fine, and also he had to serve, like, it's 5 years of supervised release after that. So again, when we looked at the competing goals of what was most important, and for us, it was to get items back to victims, but still he has a felony conviction, and he is, I mean, home imprisonment, people might think it's an easy thing. You're in prison at home, and he's not going anywhere else for several years. I think we can pretty much assure that at this point. If he does, he will go to prison. I can promise you for a significant period of time.
So did something happen to the brother?
The brother had been contacted by Montgomery County very early in the investigation when not a lot was known. He was given immunity by Montgomery County, but if it wasn't for him, I think we would not have been able, I think, to make a strong connection as we could with Michael Corbett. Remember, he lived in Delaware. He was off the grid. He did not have a legal address there. We actually tried to do a search warrant. How long did it take us, guys? We had pole cameras up to see if he ever came out of the house. We went to the post office. I mean, the man, so to even prove that he lived there, and the information we got from the brother was where he likely had stolen items stored. So given all of that, and also the brother also did, as part of his immunity agreement, he also had to obviously turn over items that he had stolen as well as that he had received from his brother that he also knew were stolen. So again, the theme here was, we prosecute where we can, but first let's make the victims whole. Yeah.
What ages are we talking about, these brothers?
Oh, they're what? They're 80s, late 70s, early to mid 70s at this point. Yeah. Yeah, they were young men when they committed these thefts, and literally they would scout out. We know one museum in Massachusetts where Michael Corbett, his later wife, girlfriend at the time, we see her signed in the log of the Belchertown Museum. The next night, the museum things were taken from the museum. So we know that Michael Corbett knew what he was looking for. He knew the value of items that he stole, and usually he would go to the smaller historical societies that he knew, one, might not have the records, and two, didn't have the level of security that people can have today. Remember, this was in the 70s, so it was a lot different then. But also, larger museums, the Connecticut State Library, the Springfield Armory, were two of the museums that he also, U.S. Army War College Museum, that he also stole things from.
On the police report, state trooper report, how did you notice they were gone, and what time of day and things like that?
Well, first of all, you have to remember, I'm 76 years old. I've been retired for 24 years. I have trouble remembering my name from day to day. And you want me to tell you about something that happened 44 years ago? Now, I have no idea how the museum discovered that they were stolen. But back in 1979, I worked in the plainclothes division, the criminal investigation unit of the state police out of Lewistown. Obviously, I got dispatched to investigate a burglary. I took an itemized list of everything that the curator here told me was stolen, and a good guesstimate of what each item might be worth. I checked the building for footprints, handprints, pry marks. How did they get in? How did they get out? I rattled a few doors, shook a few tree limbs looking for witnesses that may have saw them come or saw them leave, tell me what kind of a car they were driving, and I came up with absolutely nothing to work with. I ended up back at the station. I put everything that I had listed into what's called NCIC. That's National Crime Information Center. If there's a serial number attached, it may turn up someday. With no serial number, chances of finding it are practically zero. With that much said, the case eventually went cold. I had nothing to work on. I pushed it to the bottom of the pile, and as Paul Harvey would say, the rest of the story is up to these gentlemen.
we have any other questions?
I think back in '79, wasn't George Jacobs the curator here then yet? I think George was.
It would either be George or David Schellenberger. George was hired by the state back when the state owned the museum,
Right.
but there was like a weird period of time where funding was taken away and Jacobs left and came back, so it was either him or David Schellenberger.
Jess, you
Yes.
said on your papers when you were advertising this that these were only on display today.
Yes.
Why aren't these going into permanent display now that we have them back?
Would anybody care to donate us a really cool display case with a lock that's shatterproof? Because we do have a safe in our archives, which is located in the lower level of a library, and that is where these guys will live until we can afford to have a case that we can have them out here in a way that doesn't give me anxiety at night.
I have a question.
Yes.
Now that the people in the community know that they're back, like Alice Gray, for example, she couldn't be here today.
Mm-hmm.
If she came to the curator someday when the museum's open and asked to see them, could you take them out of the safe and show them?
The safe that we have is in our archives, which is under the library. So if anybody would want to see them not here and want to see them there, yes, absolutely, we would get them out and show them to anybody who wants to see them. But maybe one day we'll have a safe or a better, safer place for them to live out here, and then they could be on display for indefinitely. Yeah.
One step at a time.
One step at a time, yes.
Well, that, I guess I didn't, I guess I should have known the investigation took that long, but do you have any weird stories you want to share about
How many hours do you have? There's so many I want to tell you. Unfortunately, I don't think I can tell most of them. To categorize this as an investigation, I think is being polite. It has been a quest. It's been a journey. It's been 14 years since we opened this case. And we were in this game for Valley Forge. Where we work, we cover Valley Forge. But there were many times that Andy and I would take long rides from different states in this case, and we would dream about a day like today. It means so much to us, as much as it means to you, for us to be here. For years, we would see descriptions of things stolen, but for us to actually put our hands on it and be able to marry it with a place like this, and now to be here today, it is very exciting for us. It means a lot. So maybe someday we'll be able to tell all those fun stories. Unfortunately, I don't think I can tell some of them right now, but we are so excited to be here today. Absolutely thrilled.
Well, we're excited.
I will say that in doing this inventory, I did come across, unfortunately, several other items that are missing, and I have given every bit of information that I have to KT, so that her and the FBI, and there's a spreadsheet that they have, and so if anything comes up in any other raids, they will at least have the information and be able to lead it back to us then. So.
I think Jessica's very well.
Was his method the same in all the thefts? I mean, were they all break-ins or some during the daylight hours?
Obviously there were thefts. Many of them were done at night. So when the Historical Society or the museums were closed, but there were some that were done. For example, the U.S. Army War College Museum was done during the day when it was open. I mean, what we have to remember is back in the 70s, especially the smaller museums or any museum, people weren't thinking about thefts that much, and there wasn't a lot of security in the rooms. There wasn't a lot of security going in and out. There typically weren't security cameras around. So like I said, we did see both, but primarily I think he did most of his at night. And like I told Jessica, or I think I told your state representative, that there were a number of items taken from the Baker Mansion in Altoona. And there, the information that we had was that he actually went back in 2 nights in a row and really took quite a haul from the Baker Mansion. That's probably the most of any one place of items we were able to give back, but there was still a lot because their descriptions were not very good at all. So some we think probably came from there, like Pennsylvania long rifles that we knew were made in the area, but without a really good description, we couldn't say for sure that they were the ones that have been stolen for Baker Mansion. But yeah, so a variety of methods, but typically, maybe case it during the day, like he knew where things were. At one point, we even found a book that he had about East Coast museums, like small historical studies in museums, and what kind of objects were held there. So, and he had family like further out west and north from here. So we think he probably did a lot of reconnoitering in different areas, and then took advantage of that. But often go in and break in at night. We don't know. We think his girlfriend, wife at the time, had been in the armed forces. She may have been down there. They may have taken a road trip. But what was taken there was a Charles Gibbs rifle from the Mexican-American War that was taken from the Jefferson Davis house. So it's now it's going back to the Biloxi, Mississippi archives. But I can say he was definitely an opportunist. If he went to different locations. I mean, also said Massachusetts, Connecticut. New York was another location that he went to at the Old Stone Fort in Tuscarora, New York, and took a number of valuable items from that museum as well. So he got around, but he knew weapons and he knew American history.
Are there still items that you have not been able to return?
Yes, there are items we are still looking for. Absolutely. I mean, hope springs eternal for us. And both Detectives Rathbone and Dougherty have been amazing about any possibility, even looking at things at auction that still come up. Because if someone says something's stolen, even if somebody had bought it in good faith, once we tell them it's stolen, it's a stolen item and you're in possession of it. Usually people are good citizens and they realize that's what it is, a want to give it back, or we convince them that that's a good thing to give back. They won't be able to sell it or get rid of it. But yeah, there's a number of items, particularly from Valley Forge, a couple fairly historically significant and valuable items that are still missing, as well as from right here, as well as the other museums as well. So we were not able to get everything back, but again, it's for us, it's never over. I don't think.
Did you get any items back that you have not been able to figure out who they belong to? Have not been able to return them to who they came
We
from?
did have some items that we had taken in the belief that they were stolen when we executed the search warrant, and the end result was once we could not determine that they had been stolen from a location. And we did have conversations with Michael Corbett and with his attorney. There were some that Mr. Corbett said that he recalled where and when he had purchased them. But if we couldn't prove that they were stolen, we can't just hold on to them forever. So we did return those. That's not to say if we came across any information that any of those items that we can prove that they're stolen, we will not be going back to get those again.
I'll share a quick story.
Yes, thank you.
You wanted to hear a good story about this investigation. So you have to understand that Doc and I are we're municipal detectives at the Upper Marion Township Police Department in King Prussia, suburb of Philadelphia. Our normal duties are, right now we're major crime detectives, but I believe when we started this, you were in drugs and I was in economic crime. So it was this investigation was unique to us because it's not something that we typically get to work. We're usually dealing with retail thefts from the King of Prussia Mall. So we're very fortunate that our boss has allowed us to put the time and effort into these cold case burglaries. When we got to the point where we were targeting Mr. Corbett and wanted to serve a search warrant on his house, obviously it's outside of our jurisdiction. And that's where we team up with the FBI's art crime team and the U.S. Attorney's Office. The day of the search warrant, we had obviously had a number of items that we were looking for. We're down there with the FBI's evidence recovery team, which is the same exact team that processed the Boston Marathon bombings. And it's pretty unique for us to be there working alongside of these people. And we go into the house, and it was a hoarder situation. And there was not anything readily apparent in plain view that we were looking for. Starting to get frustrated. One of the FBI agents, I give him a lot of credit. It's a normal split-level house like you would see in any, residential suburban neighborhood. And he got up on the second floor, and we're up in the attic. Climbed the drop-down stairs. We're up in the attic, and he's looking down at the end of the house, and then he comes back down the hallway. He's looking down at the end of the house on the second floor, and he says, I think that there's more room on the second floor than there is in the attic. So we get a tape measure out. And we measure out the distance between where the stairs come down on the wall on the second floor, and then we get up in the attic and realize that it's 4 feet short. We then took down the false wall that he had built and located the cache of weapons that ultimately ended up being part of this case.
Do we have any other questions? Yes.
Jessica, are there any descendants of the original owners still around that were able to celebrate in receiving this back? I know you personally haven't.
I was going to say, I'm a descendant of the Culbertson family, so that was pretty cool. But Alfred Bartram and his wife, he was from England. He married a Juniata County girl, and they didn't have children, so there wouldn't be any for him. Mr. Donnelly, though, there might be. I'm not sure. No one has come forward to say so, but I mean, they lived in Juniata County, so very possible. So my question is, who do you want to play you in the movie when it comes out?
Sam Elliott for her.
There we go, Jerry. Yes. Approved. Well, we want to thank everybody for coming out today. Please enjoy the museum. We're open here until 5. There's two floors of really, really great items, and we will be here if you have any other questions about things. Do you guys mind staying for a photo, all of you? Okay. All right. So thank you guys for coming. Enjoy your historic day in academia.